Can I now welcome Mr. Paul Budde to step up to the table? Budde. Now, just learning my pronunciations. Is it Budde?
Yeah, correct.
Easy to remember. Okay. Information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses and evidence has been provided to you. For the Hansard record, could you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear?
Yes, my name is Paul Budde and I'm an independent telecommunications analyst.
I invite you to make a brief opening statement and then the committee will ask you questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at your commission. This is not the first time. I think over the last decade I've spent, 3, 4, 5 times talking to Senate commissions, made submissions and things like that. So it is not the first time. And it's therefore a little bit with sadness to see that after such a long period of time, the same issues are coming back. And to a certain extent, it's even sad to say, I told you so, yeah? That, when you make these changes that we have been seeing over the last couple of years, you end up with disaster. And as you can hear, not only here today, but around the country, I'm pretty sure that you've heard of all the problems that are there. It's great to see that the government, through the ACMA, is going to step in and look at that. But in all reality, the problems are far more fundamental. And the problems are more linked to policy and to politicians, and basically you guys are the only ones who can change that. It's not the ACMA, it's not the industry, it is you, the politicians, that have to solve this problem. Now, back to the fundamentals. So if you go back to the start of the NBN, back in the year 2005, 6, 7, around that period of time, we were talking about this. We had some problems with Telstra, who didn't want to upgrade the infrastructure. At that point in time, we were number 25 on the international ladder, and the plan was, to lift us to the top 10, over the next 5 or 10 years. So by 2020, we should be in position top 10. Now, as you all know, we are around position 60, so we've dropped rather than increased our position. But why did we want that? Why was that so important? Was that for Netflix, that didn't even exist at that point in time? Was that for gambling? Look at porno movies? No, this was about the national interest. This was about education. This was about healthcare. This was about government services. This was about commerce and of course also entertainment. That was the reason why we did it. So the benefits that we saw were not just that we all start looking at movies, but the benefits were that we could start using this infrastructure to also improve the productivity of our country in a broader sense. And if you start looking at the digital economy, and you've seen all the companies that have suffered, the Kodaks of this world and everybody else, and if you then on the other side see the companies that are now the leaders in the world, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons, etc., you see what's happening in the economy. Why are these companies so successful, and why did the others fail? Simply because the digital economy is taking up to 30% of cost away from traditional doing business, sometimes 80%. And as you all know, there are plenty of services that are now free that we paid for 5 or 10 years ago. If it's in newspapers, or if it's in entertainment, or if it's in maps and navigation and things like that, lots of these services are now free, and they would cost a hell of a lot of money, even 5 or 10 years ago. Now, exactly the same applies to healthcare, to education, to government services. The CSIRO wrote a report a couple of years ago that by 2040, our country is going to spend our total annual budget on healthcare if we continue to spend the money to have the increases in healthcare that we are seeing now. That's not sustainable. So obviously you have to look at new opportunities. Now, if you look at the internet economy, the digital economy, then you see where the road is going to. Yeah? The road is going to utilizing new technologies to lower the costs so that we can improve and maintain the lifestyle, the quality. Yeah? If we start cutting costs, we will reduce, in the traditional way, we will reduce the actual quality. But with the help of technology, you can maintain the quality of healthcare and education, and at the same time cut costs, as Amazon, Facebook, Google are showing us on how to do that. So that are the key reasons why we should actually have the national broadband network. Now, if you as a government then accept, or as politicians, if you as politicians see that You know, I expect from politicians vision. I don't expect from politicians to tell us if we should have FTN or fiber to the home or wireless or whatever. We've got engineers for that, yeah? You guys are the visionaries. You guys are leading the countries. You guys have to stand up and say, what about lifestyle? What about life quality? What about healthcare? What about education? What about productivity for our country? That's what I expect from you, yeah? So the politicians should actually set the agenda and say, that's why we want an NBN. That's why we want this infrastructure, yeah? If you look at that, then the benefits are for the country. The benefits are productivity. The benefits are lower healthcare costs. The benefits are better education. That are the benefits. Are they worth nothing? Why aren't that sort of elements not included in the fundamentals of the NBN? If you build an NBN, then, for example, you could say half of the cost is basically national benefits. These benefits don't show up on the balance sheet of the NBN or Telstra or Optus. Those benefits are benefits for the country. Yeah? So the NBN, the government, should include in its business model that at least 50% of the investment is actually national benefits. So don't charge the normal people for that. No, that is something that goes in the country sort of area. The other 50%, yes, by all means, you know, charge us, the users, for internet access. Yeah. If you look at that, then at the same time you take the war away between NBN and the ISPs. You know, I was surprised last night on television, an advertisement of NBN telling everybody, go to the Telstras of this world if you've got complaints. Wow, it has gone that far, yeah? So NBN is spending taxpayers' money to tell the world, you know, go to the ISPs because it's not us, you know, we are not the problem. Now, NBN is not the problem, the politicians are the problem. NBN is doing what the politicians have told them to do, yeah? That's what they are doing. So I'm not blaming NBN. But that's the situation where we are. Now, why do we have this war? This war is purely because of affordability. I've been involved in this industry for 30 years. I've advised the American government, the Dutch government, the Qatari government, the British government, the Irish government. So I'm pretty well aware of what's happening around the world. Now, I can tell you approximately between 20 and 25% of the people in our sort of economies, yeah, are prepared to pay $150, $200, $250 for an internet connection. They don't even think about it. That's fine. They can do that. Then you've got around 50, 60% of the population that is prepared to spend anywhere between $50 and $80. Then you've got 20% of the population that can't afford more than $30 a month. That's the reality. If you like it or not, if you can say, listen, that doesn't matter, the cost of our NBN is such that we have to charge everybody $200, bad luck, nobody's going to buy it. Yeah? It's the same like you're saying, you know, the Rolls-Royce is the best car. Why is not everybody a Rolls-Royce? Because we can't afford it. So if you look at the affordability situation, then we take that sting away if we actually start looking at what are the national benefits, take them away from the investment that we make in the NBN, and then look at the other elements, you know, how we can recoup the money. Once you actually do that, you also set up the scene for the future. As we have heard, you know, the current NBN, unfortunately, is a shocker. Yeah? The quality of that NBN is not good enough. Now, think about healthcare, think about education. These are services that will rely, you know, high quality, security, privacy, you know, you name it. Yeah? All of that sort of stuff. I'm not, you know, it's so stupid that we talk about speed. This has nothing to do about speed. This is to do about the quality of the network, reliability, resilience. You know, that's the sort of thing. Fiber to the home is the only technology that can deliver that. It's a matter of time. When do we want to introduce it? You know, I'm not arguing about, you know, that it's expensive. But if it's expensive, as I discussed with Malcolm Turnbull personally, yeah, then do it over a longer period of time. Yeah? If we can't afford 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 or $100 billion, you know, in 5 years, do it over 10 years. Yeah? But make sure we get the fibre to the home. Now, obviously, we're now too late to go back.
Budde, I'm conscious we only have half an hour for your segment, and I don't want to wrap you up because you're saying very interesting things to the committee, but I might just ask you to wind up in the next minute, and then we'll go to questions. Okay. Now, what I'm saying is that if we actually create a better financial fundament for this, then we can also start looking forwards and upgrading the fibre to the node network to the fibre to the home. That has to happen anyway.
We don't have a plan for it yet. But if you actually say the government becomes an anchor tenant because of healthcare, education, etc., yeah, you create a much better commercial model to take the FTTN network to the FTTH network over the next 5 or 10 years. If we don't do that, again, nobody's going to invest in that sort of, is going to pay that money for that sort of $50 billion investment as we've got now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, state governments are investing, spending their money as is appropriate for hospitals and schools in their individual states at the highest level optical fibre. Can I just come back to your international experience? And I thank you for sharing that with the committee. You mentioned that you've advised the UK, which I think you'd probably agree is one of the most progressive e-commerce economies. How has that been achieved over fibre to the node? And we heard earlier in evidence yesterday that businesses wouldn't be able to get the speeds they need on fibre to the node, which seems to be what you're also agreeing with. But if we look at the UK experience and the lack of pent-up demand in Australia for higher speeds because people are actually signing on to lower speeds that are on offer. How would you explain that?
I think we have to look at two different models. Our model in Australia is that the government is building the NBN. Yeah, we don't have that not in many countries. Yeah, and definitely not in the UK. So you see in the UK, it's commercially driven. Because the NBN is a monopoly here, and there's legislation that stops anybody else to bring fibre to the home, to the door. TPG, Telstra and others have said we would like to do that, but they're not allowed by law to do that in Australia. So we don't have a market forces bringing fibre to the home to those areas that want to pay for it. Now, as I mentioned, 25% of the population is already now prepared to pay for that. So what you typically see happening in other countries is obviously market-driven. They go for the 25% of those areas where people are prepared to pay.
So you're saying it's not the fibre to the node itself, because that's what they have in the UK, which is very successful. You're saying it isn't the issue that the fibre is going to the node. You're talking about the commercial model.
I've always said fibre to the node is not a problem. If it's part of a plan to eventually lift that to fibre to the home. That's what you see in all the other countries. There's the market-driven. You see, there's now 10 million homes are going to be connected in Britain by fibre to the home. The announcement was only made this week. So there is, and that the government supports that, regulations, whatever, yeah. So you see that there is every country, there's no country in the world that is now where the government has a policy to bring fibre to the node. There's no country in the world where the government is prescribing you have to have fibre to the node. No country in the world. We're the only one. Yeah? All other countries, you see that incumbents like to protect their network. They come with fibre to the node. They can protect their network. And then slowly, where there is commercial opportunities, they actually extend it to fibre to the home. Yeah? I have no problem with it. But
what you seem to be suggesting is what NBN is doing, which is and what Britain has done, which is upgrade as required, with the time to revenue concept and the investment in where the demand is now, leaving for later the investment for where the demand is then, given that 80% of Australians who have signed up to NBN are on speeds of 25.5 or less. The rationale for spending the money when the demand is there. Is that not something that, with your business background, you can appreciate?
I come back to the situation that the other countries are using market forces and not government. Yeah? Here we are in the unique situation that you as a government are spending the money. My question is, why are you spending the money? Is that to make money, to make revenue, or is that for the benefit of the country? So our situation in Australia that we've said, for the benefit of the country, we as a government are going to build the NBN. That's totally different of a bundle of private companies starting to look at investing money. They want to make money. They're not looking after the national benefits. They want to make money. If that's the case, if you say the Australian government is implementing the NBN to make money, okay, then I'm fully, then you can say, yes, go for the 25% and leave everybody else behind. But that's not the reason why we built an NBN in Australia, yeah? It's a totally different starting point, yeah? Where you have a government investing the money or private companies investing the money. Now, you can then, in the situation as the UK, but, you can mention 15, 20, 50 other countries, government come on with policies, seeding money, all sorts of things to stimulate fibre to the home, yeah? from a government perspective, all governments involved in broadband are talking about fibre to the home. We are the only one that actually prescribes you can't have fibre to the home. We only give you fibre to the node.
I'm going to hand over to the Deputy Chair now for questions, given time is short.
I think Mr Jones actually has some questions. I might just defer to him in this case.
Thanks, Mr Budde. Thanks for your, once again, for your education, for your, well, that too, but your submissions. You've been a regular contributor. I want to go to your written submission. You don't have it in front of you, I see, but I know you're familiar with it. At paragraph 10, you give some evidence about the relative costs of fibre to the node and fibre to the house. You say the cost of building fibre to the house is going down. Why do you say that?
Okay, I'm very closely watching and in very close contact with Google, Vint Cerf, one of the inventors of the internet, and I'm very close to him. So I've been able to follow the Google Fiber, for example, and also discussions with him, and I've sent him stuff from the NBN and say, what do you think? And in a group of other colleagues in America and Europe, I've been discussing that, and I've fed that back to the government as well as to NBN and others. And what you see is that over the last 5 years, 10 years, you've seen an increase in companies becoming involved in fibre to the home. I mean, it's so obviously with everything in technology. Startup, very expensive. Yeah. Then you've got a period that you start improving the technology, you start getting a mass market. Yeah. So then you get a 30 to 40% cost reduction on fibre to the home.
Can I go to that point? Because yesterday, when I asked the CEO of the NBN about this very same issue, when I made the point that they have not reduced the cost, the estimated per premises cost of fibre to the home as compared to fibre to the node, he said there is no need for us to reduce it because we're not doing it anymore. Is it fair for the NBN to be comparing the cost of fibre to the home versus fibre to the curb versus fibre to the node based on 2013 estimates of what a per premises cost of fibre to the home would be?
If I talk to my engineering colleagues around the world, then they all agree that fibre to the home has decreased by roughly 30–40% over the last 3
So whatever it cost in 2013, 30 to 40% less.
Look at New Zealand. Look at New Zealand. It's a classic example, where you see a continuous, and it's published. You can actually look at those figures. So they publish what it costs. Google exactly the same. They have public information what it costs per premises to do that. The other thing is even far more important, because what we get in Australia is that we don't do fibre to the home, which is, let's say, in 18 months' time, I think, I can be wrong, could be 12 months, could be 2 years, doesn't matter. Between now and the next 2 or 3 years, the price of rolling out fibre to the home will be cheaper than rolling out fibre to the node. We're building all the stupid cabinets, that are going to be on the scrap heap in a couple of years' time. They cost money. So we're going to, if we continue to build the fibre to the home, we are spending more taxpayers' money that will be destructed over time.
Thank you.
So one sec. The maintenance of the fibre to the home network is far more important. The maintenance costs are so much lower. So the cost of fibre to the node to the user in Australia will go up because of the maintenance cost, which is labour related, while in other countries that have fibre to the home, they might start high because the initial costs were high, costs are coming down, the subscription to fibre to the home users will go down, subscriptions to fibre to the node in Australia, because the NBN is running out of money, are going up. They have to go up, unless the government says, we write off half of it for national benefits, and then we have a much better cost base to actually make sure that we don't get that situation.
I want to go directly to that point. Yesterday, we asked the CEO of the NBN about the revenue potential of the business and about the valuation of the company. He said he had no intention and saw no need to write down the value of the company, and he was very buoyant about the revenue potential of the assets under management. In paragraph 11 of your submission, you're saying something very, very different. Why is that?
because of the fact that, you know, if you start looking at the current war that we already described, yeah, why are people taking up the low level? Simply affordability. It's nothing to do, they don't want speed, but the affordability. For $30 in Hong Kong, that's the wrong example, you get 100 megabits. For $30, yeah, 25, yeah. So, okay, in America it costs $80, yeah. But here, that sort of service is going to cost $150, $200. Hey, I'm not going to buy that, yeah. So it is affordability what it's all about. Now, if you don't change the affordability, you won't be able to charge or to sell your higher level services. So there's no way. I've been talking to you guys for 10 years, and every single time I come back with the same story. I'm happy to come back in 5 years' time and tell you exactly the same story, and you will say, yeah, but the CEO said this, or Telstra said that, or the minister said that. Guys, you are politicians. You are here for the vision, yeah? We need your vision. We don't need your engineering skills. Leave that to the engineers to work that out.
Thank you, Mr. Budde. I happen to agree with what you're saying. I just need to give you the opportunity because I can't give evidence to this committee. You can.
Okay.
All right, so we've got a couple more that are on the case. Are you, Senator Urquhart, can I just get an indication if you'd like to ask questions? Mr. Jones, have you completed your questions?
Yes, one further question, thank you. You answered the question in respect of the revenue prospects. The valuation, you've also made some comments here and in the past about the valuation of the NBN. I was wondering, would you like to respond to what the CEO said yesterday, that he saw no need to write down the value of the NBN, currently book value of it around about 50?
Yeah, you know, I mean, and I'm not a financial expert, you know, but if you talk to people in the financial market, in this situation, PricewaterhouseCoopers, you know, they clearly, they're on the record of saying, you know, the value would be something around $25 billion commercial, you know, sort of level. And that totally fits with my opinion, where I say the value of the NBN, guys, is hundreds of billions of dollars. Hundreds of billions of dollars worth of economic, social benefits, productivity. Hundreds of billions of dollars, yeah? That's its worth, yeah? But the government doesn't acknowledge that, yeah? The government doesn't want to acknowledge that in its business model. If you do that in your business model and you say, even half of it, you know, $25 billion is national benefits. Let's concentrate on the other 25 to get a return on your investment, yeah? That's how I see that we should take the NBN. You solve all the problems, you solve the war, you solve the whole sort of upgrading the next situation by taking that. I know how incredibly difficult it will be for the government to actually say that, because politically wise it will see as a backflip and blah blah blah, and nobody wants to do that. But the best thing for the country, not for politics, the best thing for the country would be to face this as politicians and take the responsibility that we made it a national government-owned network and not a BT or a Telstra or a Deutsche Telekom-owned network. The government did this. We cannot compare ourselves with BT or with Telecom Australia or with Telstra or whatever. We as a government, yeah, have made a decision. And this is a different model.
Quick one from Senator O'Neill and then Ms Wicks to take us up to the break.
Thanks for your evidence again today, Mr Budde, and I'm very sorry that after the evidence you gave in Terrigal, where we were still hopeful that the fibre to the premises might still be rolled out, we're at this point, all these years down the track. When you spoke in your opening remarks, you said it's sad to say, I told you so, and the chair cut you off when you mentioned personal conversations with the Prime Minister, Mr Turnbull, who was the Communications Minister who made this decision and is now the Prime Minister.
It's not correct.
Presiding over its
rollout. It's not
rollout.
correct.
No, she didn't cut me off. I agree with you.
I would like
members of the committee will not reflect on each other.
I would like you to have the opportunity to go ahead and make your comments about your conversations with Mr Turnbull and why you are saying, I told you so, and what the impact of that is.
Okay, I told you so was more in relation to the 5, 6, 7 submissions I've made over the last decade and discussions and things like that. I specifically have spoken to Mr Turnbull on several occasions regarding the NBN, both in the situation when just in 2012-13 before the current government came into power, as well as around that time when he was just in the communications minister. We had several discussions. He totally agreed fibre to the home was the best possible solution. He agreed with that. There's no issue. His problem was affordability. We can, as a country, we cannot afford to pay that money for a fibre to the home network. My argument at that point in time to Mr. Turnbull was, okay, I don't mind. You know, if that's the case, I can't judge that. Yeah, if you government don't have the money for it, I can't judge that. But then let's make that roll it out over a longer period of time. Yeah, stick to the best possible technology that we anyway need. Yeah, but okay, if we don't do it in 5 years, do it in 10 years or 15 years time. That was my suggestion to Mr. Turnbull at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Budde. Ms. Wicks.
I'd actually like to pick up on that very point, Mr. Budde. And by the way, thank you for your contribution and your expertise. And I know you have been a long-standing advocate here on the Central Coast for better telecommunications. But I guess I want to pick up. You mentioned you mentioned we should wait, if necessary, up to 10 years for fibre to the home. Just paint a picture. In September 2013, after 6 years, there were 300 premises connected in Robertson, and there was a footprint of fibre to the premise of 7,500 homes and businesses, 90% of which could not get access because they were classified by NBN Co, as it was back then, as Service Class 0 or Service Class 1. All sorts of problems ensued. Fast forward 4 years later, 96% of my electorate is able to access the NBN via a multi-technology mix, including fibre to the premise, fibre to the node, etc., etc. That represents more than 80,000 homes and businesses. I look at 300, I look at 80,000. You talked about an opportunity cost, and look, I think this is actually a very important conversation, because what is the opportunity cost of waiting 10 years? Surely, you know, in the vast majority of cases, customers are experiencing, and we are hearing some challenges with some transition to the network, but people want access to get onto the network, which is part of their frustration. They want to be able to use it. They want the high speed. They want the benefits that you've actually talked about. If we wait 10 years, 10 years is an eternity in technology land. What is the opportunity cost of us waiting?
You know, I agree with what you're saying, but I totally disagree that we don't do anything for 10 years. You know, I mean, first of all, when we established the NBN, you know, we started discussing about it 2005, 6, etc. Then in 2009, you know, we start making the decision, hey, this is a national project. You don't expect that on Saturday afternoon suddenly half the country is connected. Yeah, it takes time. So I have no issue whatsoever that, you know, we only had 300,000 or 30,000 or whatever. Yeah. But, you know, what I like from the government is a vision, yeah, on how to go forward. I've discussion with Malcolm Turnbull. Yeah, I said, okay, I don't mind fibre to the node. I don't mind whatever you want to do. But the end goal should be, how do we get to fibre to the home? Yeah? If that means that in certain situations we have to have fibre to the node, yeah? Okay, so be it. I have no problems with that. Because then we do that with a vision in our mind that we go to fibre to the home. So we would not do anything stupid, yeah, that would actually create a problem by going to fibre to the home.
I presume the reason you want fibre to the home is so that people can access in their home up to 100 megabits per second guaranteed without a problem?
Yes, something like that.
Okay.
For healthcare, yep, for education, for government services.
So how do you solve affordability problems under your proposal, given that 85% of people are using a service or paying for a service of around 25 megabits per second? I think it's 25? Yeah. Anyway, it's at much 80% of Australians.
You know, it's the price. As I mentioned, you know, in other countries, you can buy 100 megabits, you know, for under $100. Yeah. So here we can't. Yeah. So it's an affordability problem, and that's because, you know, so we even have a second-rate technology now, which costs more than a first-rate technology in other countries.
So how would you, and I will make this the last question, how would you solve that problem, Mr. Budde, in Australia, given our massive demographic, you know, the geography that we have, the distance that we have to lay fibre and cable and some of the costs associated with that? How would you solve that problem, given consumers are indicating at the moment their appetite is not to pay for that higher speed?
Because you as the government took the decision. It's not Telstra, it's not BT, it's not Deutsche Telekom. The government rolls out this network. So the government sees national benefits. national benefits, then the government should take those national benefits into account in relation to the business model. If you're a private company, you would not roll out for the whole country, which is so difficult because we are such a big country. Yeah, that's what you not do. Then you only go for the 25% and do the rest later. As a government, we didn't say, Telstra, you do the 25%. We in Australia said the government does it. Then the government has to understand that it's not a revenue-earning project, but that it's a project that's for the benefit of the whole nation, and therefore at least half of the cost should be taken into account by the government.
So the taxpayer should pay for it, is what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Budde. And there is, as you know, a subsidy from the city to the bush in Australia to cope with the wide geographic distances.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm delighted that constituents in my electorate who would otherwise not make a commercial grade provision of a service are in many cases put at the head of the queue. So thank you very much for your evidence.
My pleasure.
And the committee is now adjourned until suspended until 1:30 p.m. Thank you.